you really can't get anything going with your health until you get that gut at least back into some sense of balance.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now, here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Houghton, and today we're joined by Angela Simpson, who's been a healthcare professional for over 20 years. She's trained in functional medicine as a practitioner to support women with rebalancing their bodies from a root cause perspective. Angela struggled with her own health and autoimmune diagnosis in her mid-30s and healed herself with functional medicine. She's the founder of Angela Simpson Functional Medicine, and she's passionate about sharing what has worked for the countless women that she's worked with over the years to rebalance their bodies naturally. In today's conversation, we're talking about how a personalized healing approach, simplified and consistent, can allow you to feel like your best self again. Angela, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited for our conversation, but I would love for listeners to get to know a little bit more about you. I know you've been in healthcare for a long time, but what brought you into functional medicine?
Yeah, probably not unlike many. My own personal health challenges and even some with my family members is what brought me here. So, as well as working with clients, for years and years and seeing that there's probably more out there for them to get them feeling like the best version of themselves. But it started with myself. So yeah, just a little bit about me, my background. I've been a healthcare professional for many, many years, almost 25. And
Which is
I've been
amazing because you look 25. So well done.
That's nice. Yeah, having said that, I do feel possibly better now than I did when I was 25.
Me
So
too. Yep.
yeah, and and that's actually when I started to discover that there were some things going on with my health. Early 20s, I started to have a health crisis, and no one could figure out why. I went to every doctor, at every test. No one could figure out what was going on. I was, put on drugs for asthma. I was getting iron injections, all these things just to try and band-aid what was going on for how I was feeling. And it wasn't until I got to an actual functional medicine practitioner that I got to the root of what was going on for me. And there was multiple layers to it, but really I actually did have autoimmunity already. So I had Hashimoto's, which is a very common autoimmune condition. And I had no clue, so I wasn't managing it properly, and
Sure.
none of the practitioners knew either. So, fast forward to now, I've learned a lot about myself, a lot about what makes my system tick and operate correctly. And I feel a lot better 20, 25 years later than I did in my 20s. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And super passionate about helping people discover that for themselves as well.
Amazing. I very much understand that passion.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited. And I work with more women than men as well, because as we all know, when you look at the numbers in the autoimmune world, it ends up shaking out to being mostly women. But you specialize, at least for right now,
Yes.
in helping women in their like 40s, 50s, right? 40 to 60 something, navigate the changes that they're dealing, as hormones are changing and shifting. And we all know there's just so much overlap between hormones and autoimmunity, and so I know you see what I see, which is that the approach you take, not necessarily people aren't coming to you. Sometimes, like you said, don't even know they have autoimmunity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, because I think we have a lot of similarities. I know you do some in-depth testing, and just like nobody found your Hashimoto's before because they weren't looking for it, right?
Exactly.
Share with us a little bit about how you're helping women. I say feel like their best selves.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think, given the number of women that I've worked with over the years, which is, hundreds and hundreds, um, I'd say, up to 80, possibly even more, 80% or more are either teetering on the edge of autoimmunity and they don't know it, or they've, had a recent diagnosis. And it is definitely more common as you get older, for sure, into your 40s and 50s. Yes, there is changes that are happening with hormones that can influence that, but there's various other factors as well. So, the way that I look at it with women and how they find me really is they're struggling just with health in general. They know their hormone levels are lowering. Many women I work with, the top concerns and why they seek me out and find me is they have, debilitatingly low energy, regardless of how much they sleep. They often that overlays with brain fog and low brain energy. They're not functioning, they're not focusing, a lot of fog. They think it's all hormonal overlay. The hormones are lowering. They've been told it's tied into them needing more estrogen or progesterone or a combination of the two. And many women have mood imbalances, weight gain. They're just not feeling like themselves, and they want to figure out why. And and often when we kind of pull the curtain back beyond the blood labs, we can start to understand why. And that's where often we find out that people are either again teetering on that edge of autoimmunity, or in fact they have markers that already show that they're in that category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and as you're listing, the low energy, the brain fog, the weight gain, the mood, and I mean, it's sure sounds also fair. It's just I feel like a spectrum, right? And all of those things also fit with autoimmunity, and most of them are the things that have been normalized, right, with aging. And like you said, oh yeah, it's just a part of this.
Yep.
Suck it up, Buttercup. That's just how it is. And
Mhm.
here are two people in different countries with completely different experiences that both feel better now than they did in their 20s, 30s. Definitely for me, my 40s, my 50s have been amazing. um
Yeah.
and so I love that you talk about playing, like the layers, because it it's never just one thing, right?
Yes.
And so I used to, in the beginning of my practice, it would frustrate me when clients would come in and it's like their driver was weight loss, and I'm like, well, that's like when we get to the root, that'll go away on its own. And now I
Mhm.
realize, like, whatever they show up with, that's fine because we can help.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, and it's rare. I'm not saying food is not important. Food is very important. But it's not typically, that kind of stereotypical, well, just put less food in your mouth. It's like, no, it's all of these things going on in the
Mhm.
body. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the food's an interesting one for females, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think just as a societally, we've been programmed from as
Yeah.
a child, even like, how much to eat, how to,
Yeah.
not that, all those things, right? And then we really focus on the foods and the calories and that
Yeah.
kind of,
Well, and
but
then it turns into that blame of like, oh, well, I did this. And it's like, well, no, probably things aren't optimized.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so where do you start with your women, with your ladies?
Yes. Again, like my practice has evolved over the years as well as,
Sure.
your clients are your best teachers. So I've
Yes.
learned a lot from them along the way. And what I have learned, which makes sense too, when I think of myself and my health journey and how I could have really shortened it up if I would have known this
Oh,
ahead of
sure.
time. um, is it's important to get out in front of understanding what's going on internally in your body. And for that, you really need to do customized, detailed lab testing. Um,
Yes.
you know, uh, it's never enough to just check the surface layer, which is your blood labs.
Yeah.
Well-trained functional medicine practitioner can really dig even into those blood labs to understand some imbalances and nuances and where things could potentially be coming from. But it's never going to get you to the full picture. So I know that the first place I start, we talk about the goals, we talk about where you want to get to, regardless of if you come to me with autoimmunity or not. And then from there, we do the detailed labs to start with. So, there's a cost up front, but I always say, you can't change what you don't know, right?
Sure. Sure.
That's our starting point, is comprehensive functional lab testing. So we check the gut microbiome. We check urine to check for different toxin loads. We check to see how the mitochondria are functioning, nutrient levels, digestion, ability to absorb. We really strip it back to the basics with understanding these labs.
Yeah, it is so important, and typically, especially the people I work with, but by the time they don't want to try something and then have me say, "Well, that didn't work as well as we were hoping. Now let's, spend the money on the next layer of testing."
Yeah.
And so I understand that honest, like, yep, it is a cost up front, but it's time, energy, health, all the things.
Yeah.
And so you really you're just getting that comprehensive look at, okay, where's the body right now? What is going on?
Yeah. And I love solving puzzles. I always have on my coffee table upstairs a new puzzle I'm working on, connecting the dots together.
Mhm.
Um, and that really sometimes is what it is. By the time
Yeah.
someone gets to a diagnosis of autoimmunity or they're teetering on that edge, what's going on inside can be quite complex, right?
Sure.
So we need to understand how to put those complexities together. Ironically, in a simplified plan for people, right? Because it can be
Yes.
overwhelming. I've got this wrong. I got this wrong. I got all these things I got to do. What am I going to do? Right? How am I going to take that first step? So it's
Yeah.
that complexity and making it simple and guided so that people have a structured plan that's customized for success.
I love that. And before we started to record, you were talking about the importance of consistency. And so, and
Yeah.
actually, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to, because I want you to share more about your approach with listeners. But you said this and it just jumped out at me. So,
Yeah.
what do you mean
Yeah.
by that?
I also just reflect on my own health, of course,
Sure.
too. So many people I've worked with over the years. I never see those success stories with people that are not consistent with their health strategies.
Okay.
But with that consistency, there needs to be a highly customized strategy, because I find people I work with, probably you as well, by the time they get to us,
Mhm.
they say, I've had consistency. Like you say, like, I've been doing all the things with the diet, the lifestyle, trying to stress less, sleep more. I've been consistent, yet I'm still not well, right? But it's not customized enough to them. So
Gotcha.
I find when people are consistent with their strategies, lifestyle wise,
Mhm.
typically over a period of anywhere from 3 to 6 months, they can actually get their autoimmunity into full remission. And I've
Wow.
seen that several times. So,
Amazing. And
yeah.
I always love that kind of time period where the things that you said that they kind of didn't believe, but
Yes.
they have their own motivation, right? Like, I mean, I wouldn't have believed if you told me I could feel this well at 56 when I
Yeah.
didn't think I'd live to see 50. Like, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have
Mhm.
done the things because any forward motion with the needle moving would have been an improvement, right? But
Yeah.
it is so much fun when
Yes.
people get to really experience that the body is designed to heal. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, I
It
love
wants that. I think the other thing too is, there is human behavior we always have to keep in mind as well.
we're complex.
And yeah, it's complex, and there's various challenges for reasons why people find it hard to have that consistency
Hmm.
with their strategy, even if it's laid out in front of them and, detailed yet simple follow through strategies. So I usually find with people that start to follow through as well as they can, 80, 90, 100%, within about 3 to 4 weeks, they start to have less symptoms. They start to feel better, right? So
Yeah.
I find from a behavioral perspective, and I'm sure you'd be the same, like, for example, say the goal was weight loss. if you've, been in this highly detailed plan for 4 weeks and you haven't had any change on the scale,
Right.
it's hard for you to continue to follow through.
Sure,
Right?
we need that reward, that
Yeah.
motivation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, people that are just daunted by even starting to make these changes, I do find almost every time I work with someone who puts the strategy in place that we lay out, within 3, 4 weeks, they're noticing symptom change. So it's pretty
Wow.
consistent.
Yeah. Is there anything that you find that you do anything different for somebody with autoimmunity versus not? Or is it just, yes, customized, individualized, but is the approach the same when you're looking to optimize?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and I would say the approach is very similar.
Yeah.
In functional medicine with our training, we have very specific history taking strategies, the ways that we break down the root causes of what's going on in the body and put together a plan based on labs that's very personalized in their health history and their timeline of events that it may have happened as far back in their body as when they were in the womb.
Mhm.
And we help them trace that back to where they are now. I would say that it's not an autoimmune specific plan or protocol,
Right.
if you will. It's just highly personalized. I mean, with as far as looking at trends, in
Mhm.
regards to labs, and I do run genetic testing as well. I often do see, especially with people that have autoimmunity developing earlier in
Mhm.
life, that they have, potential for higher triggers, higher toxin loads in the body,
Sure.
recirculation of things. They may have had a lot of antibiotic use as a child, or, there's sometimes some really specific history that can lead you to the why quite a
Right.
bit sooner.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I wouldn't say that what I do for autoimmunity when I work with women is
Mhm.
different than someone who doesn't. It's just personalized to them to get
Yeah.
them the results they need. The
Me
main thing.
too was kind of a
Yeah.
loaded question, but I think people need to hear that because I hear all the time, well, do you work with people with this diagnosis or that diagnosis? And it's like, well, I'm not working with your diagnosis. I'm working with you. And, I'd actually prefer, there's the work we need to start with is like, you are not your diagnosis.
Mhm. And it's
And so,
personalized care, right?
yeah,
I mean, how many times, probably for you as well, have someone come to you as saying, "I've been on the AIP diet for the last
yeah.
5 months and nothing's changed."
Yeah, and I am a certified AIP coach, and what you said right there is the problem. It's not a diet
Mhm. Exactly.
because
And
it also does take into account, you know, the stress management and movement and sleep and toxins and all the things. But you talk about you make the complex, you simplify it for people, and everybody gets so caught up in this, oh my gosh, AIP, it's all these things and it that's that and I started there too. What do I need to avoid,
Mhm,
right, to feel better?
mhm.
And AIP is so much more than that. It's also about what you need to include and
Yeah.
I think it's a great framework and some people get great results, but I like you, I do a lot of testing and I've had so many people come to me and I've been on AIP X amount of time and I just don't feel better and we do testing and it's like yeah well because all
Yeah.
that spinach you've been pounding every day to be so healthy you are sensitive to right now because you didn't heal your like it just
Yeah. Yes.
it's not one thing.
No.
Yeah.
No. And I find too, usually, the root for most people, even though it needs to be customized and individualized, but the root always starts at the gut,
Yeah.
right? Starts at that interface of the gut. And, for one person, it may be that they have a big overgrowth, and the gut microbiome's really out of balance. For the other person, they may have, a lot of disruption in the gut lining, and that may be the main thing. They don't have a lot of overgrowth.
Right.
Someone might look like their gut microbiome looks quote unquote okay on labs. But then you run a toxin load test and you see that their parabens, phthalates, BPA,
Yeah.
all those toxins from our environment are through the roof, and that's their trigger. So, the way that we understand what's going on in the body and then personalize their strategy, it really is the way to get them back to health, right?
Yeah. That's so well put. So where we talked, I know we both said it's not just food. Then we talked about food a
Yeah.
little bit. My approach, when again, back to the customized, right? I've had people say, well, just tell me what you eat, you healed. And I'm like, well, you're not me.
Mhm.
And so definitely, but I do say across the board, the starting point, if you're listening and you're not already there, whole, real food.
Yeah.
Consider the sourcing. You want, if you're eating, hopefully my preference, hopefully you are eating animal protein, but hopefully it is pastured, wild caught, all the things.
Yes.
Just think of, and I find this actually with most pillars that we're talking about, think of how we used to live. How did
Yes.
animals used to live? They didn't live in a feedlot. Like they weren't
Yeah.
eating, cows weren't eating corn because they can't. It makes them sick. Like,
Totally.
so that's a way of simplifying something complicated, right? Is like, wait,
Mhm.
is this fill in the blank how nature intended,
Mhm.
right? Like, do you
Exactly.
agree with that?
Oh, yeah, I even think of sometimes I use my pet as an analogy, my dog. What keeps them happy and healthy? It's not living off packaged processed foods and, sitting in the house all day.
Watching TV. Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting them out for some daily exercise. It's,
Yeah.
giving a bit of a variety of food, not just those dried up crunchies that are highly processed, every
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Um, and their life is quite simple, right? They're
Yeah.
not high-paced, stressful life, but I also think of a pet I had that was part wolf, and we'd go out in nature, and the animal would be eating off the bushes, be eating the berries, would be
They
bringing
do. I
game
had
and
a
yeah.
golden retriever who used to wait. This was back when I was still growing and eating peppers. Now we grow a couple little, but we used to grow a lot of bell peppers in the summer, and she always knew when they were ripe. She would, they weren't ready to pick. She would not touch them, and we'd go out to harvest them, and they were gone. And she loved bell peppers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I, I didn't teach her that.
No. No,
Yeah,
we're so far away from what, innately the body needs. We're so out of tune with that, right? But
yeah,
if we can strip it back to the basics, we're animals too, right? We're really not a lot different. So
yeah,
I do think it's the ultra processed packaged foods that are the big one. I agree with you. The whole
yeah.
foods. It may or may not be that they need to have the nightshades removed, which is that big,
Maybe
oh,
not.
you're autoimmune,
Yeah.
how do you get rid of the
I,
nightshades?
and I still like reintroduce, right?
Mhm.
Because again, and there's no across the board, but consistency, but what we need changes over time, right? And so
Yeah.
I will, when the spirit moves me, be like, okay, I wonder if now, or like
Mhm.
I'm totally fine eating the tomatoes we grow over the
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, yeah, how it's grown, the nutrient density has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah.
Where it's coming from. I do think there is a connection there too with us growing our own food, you
Right.
know, and there's
Yeah.
a kind of a spiritual emotional connection to that as well. You
Absolutely.
find it in the store. I mean, those tomatoes are such a good example. Any tomato you buy in the store tastes like water when you grow
Yes.
it in your
Yeah.
back. Right. It's just such a difference. So yeah, types of foods matter, but I find for the most part with people, when we get really restrictive, it actually increases the stress in their environment,
Which affects
um,
their gut
and impact ours. Yeah, because it
and
brings
sleep and all the
inflammation.
other things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So there has to be some rotation of foods, whole foods. Some people may find that certain foods are aggravating to them, so they should keep them out for sure, or at least limit them.
yeah.
But it's that rotational diet and kinda going back to intuitively what our bodies need, is really
Yeah.
what helps calibrate that immune system over time, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree, and I'm glad you brought up. I was going to go there next. The stress piece, right? Because that's how I heard you describe what you do. Is you try to best you can reduce the stress while getting really good results. And so, what is your approach with, like, do you always start with food? What are the other things that impact? our wellness?
I mean, I would say generally speaking, I always start with food.
Okay.
I always start with incorporating an anti-inflammatory diet,
Okay.
which may be different for some people than others, the types of foods that they're either reducing or even completely eliminating, sometimes short term. For example, if you have a test come back where they're sensitive reacting to gluten, I say, well, take it out 100%. It's not a
Right.
halfway point at this point, right?
Yeah.
So
It's like I say, being kind of gluten-free is like being kind of pregnant. Like it's just not a thing. It's
yeah,
not.
kind of brushing your teeth once or twice a week, and then you
Ew.
end up with cavities, right? I mean,
Love
yeah,
that.
so I'd say I almost always start with diet, but of course, beyond that, it's really where the customized lab testing comes in. And I do definitely lab test around hormones and checking the adrenals and cortisol as well.
Mhm.
Um, Now, there isn't a way, I always tell people this too, there isn't a way to supplement yourself out of stress. There isn't a diet
I
that
like
helps
that.
you
It's
manage
true.
stress. Yeah. Um, and there's different stressors on the body when we see even higher cortisol results on lab testing, right? So there's emotional stressors and then there's those physical stressors. And sometimes it's hard to know when you see those high cortisol results, what's what. When people have a
Yeah.
lot of inflammation in their bodies, it can be that's driving that high cortisol. They can have, a lot of blood sugar imbalance and that's driving their cortisol up. They're not necessarily pulling their hair out because they're so stressed, right?
Mhm.
Um, Whereas some people are, right? They've maybe got past or current trauma going on. Their nervous system is always activated. Some
Yes.
are under a lot of emotional and chronic stress, which puts a lot of pressure on the immune system because it ramps up that inflammation over time. And there's lots of research around how cortisol starts to break down that gut lining, which is that sensitive barrier that helps us to manage our immune response.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so important. And I love that you said that. I also want to add one more type of person who's not aware that like that whole you don't have to feel stressed out. And you said it like with the cortisol, right? It may not be coming from, but even the people that are experiencing a lot of emotional, psychological, and physiological stress.
Yeah.
And it's a coping mechanism, it's why they show up at our virtual
Yes.
doorstep. But I've had so many people say, they show up, oh no, I'm like, let's talk about your stress. I'm not stressed. And then they, tell me about their lives. And I'm like, I am like, wow,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
they've kind of just shut off. It's the same thing with ignoring the really quiet whisper symptoms,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's a coping mechanism. Or I say all the time, like when I was in so much pain every day, like I was a single mom with 3 kids. Like you have to
You
shut
adapt,
that out,
right? You
right?
form adaptations around
Yeah.
that stress, and then you kind of almost act like it's not even there,
Yeah.
you know?
You
You
know.
normalize that response so much that it seems like it's not there. I'll never forget when I had a call with one of my clients who I was just getting to know, but I said, "How is it going?" She said, "Oh, it's pretty good. My dad died yesterday, but besides that, things are fine." And she just kind of kept going and she just wanted to talk like business as usual. And I said, "Oh my gosh, like, do you want to reschedule the call?" "No, I'm fine," you know.
Fine. It's a four letter F word right there.
Yeah, so people have different ways of coping with stress, I guess, as
Yes.
well. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely women are infamous for internalizing those stressors, right? And that does start to break down and affect the physical over time. And I think that's a real key reason for doing lab testing because
Yeah.
people can say they're
Then you
fine.
see it
"Oh,
on
I'm
paper.
fine." Yeah, and then you're like, "You're not fine." Here's why. Um, and then, yeah, what are the strategies around that I use? I mean, there are various different strategies depending on the person in front of you, of course. There are some proven strategies around meditation. It's been well researched, well studied.
Mhm.
One of the best ways to recalibrate the nervous system. Some people are much more resistant to it than others, but
Yeah.
anyone who's truly been able to develop a meditation practice that I've seen has had a improvement.
Consistency right there is
Yeah.
the key. Yeah.
So key. Yeah.
So true. So
Yeah, like I
true.
had one client replace her phone scrolling at night with meditation.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh. Life
night
changing,
night and
right?
day. Yeah, with her immune system response.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
And what is your perspective on, and I'm going to say both, even though we just said, we're talking about whole health, right? But as you're working with women with, either going into or dealing with hormone changes, I know one of the things impacted from that, it can be sleep or vice versa.
Mhm.
But
Yes,
same with autoimmune, whether it's, from the inflammation and the pain, you're not sleep. It just, everything, pretty much everything is a two-way street.
it
Um,
is. But with the hormone shifts specifically, as estrogen and progesterone drops quicker, as we know, and then estrogen kind of oscillates down a roller coaster, and then it really drops off when you go into menopause.
Mhm.
But as those hormones drop, your insulin and cortisol naturally rises a bit. And so, when those hormones get out of balance, even just with the natural change that's going on in the body, that automatically creates more inflammation in the body,
Yeah.
right? So if you don't have a great balance there when those hormone levels are starting to shift and change, that
Mhm.
often is the triggers for development of autoimmunity, right? We know
Yeah.
autoimmunity is a 10 to 15 years in the making development
Behind the
process.
scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, but the drop in hormones can be a big trigger for women. And, just to understand those connections, it really has to do with that natural rise in inflammation. And we know if cortisol is on that higher side, we're not going to sleep that well. And,
Right.
and that's a big reset for inflammation in the night, right? So,
Yeah. And
mhm.
and do you hear, I find this actually probably more in the men that I do work with, but do you have people show up that say, well, I just don't need, I only need 4 hours of sleep?
Mhm.
What do
Yeah.
you
Or I
what
don't
is
know.
your
I've definitely worked with people that have 4 hours of sleep. I haven't worked with any that say they feel
that think
well
it's
on 4
okay?
hours. I do work with women though that often have 5 to 6 hours of sleep on average.
Okay.
Um, and they're coping to a point. But when
Yeah.
you really break down the detail with them, they're often not coping that well.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it, again, layers, right? Like they
Yeah.
don't know because they haven't experienced good restorative sleep.
Yeah. Where
And
it's been
so,
so long, they forget,
yeah.
right? A lot of
Yeah.
women, they, end up having children right in the middle of their career in their early to mid 30s or even late 30s. And they're already starting to have the hormonal shifts come in there, right? So they potentially haven't had really great sleep for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
true. It's
And then
true.
the drop in hormones just really, accelerates that, right? So they don't remember what it felt like to have that asleep all night feeling, waking up feeling rested.
Yeah. And that's the waking up feeling rested. That's on as people are telling you they feel better. Like, I feel like that's sometimes the last one, right? Pain will be better and weight will start to fall off. And, the laundry list starts to get smaller. And then we get to that, yay, I'm waking up with energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I actually just got off a call with someone this morning who she started out with her HbA1c, which is that measure of blood sugars over 3-month time periods, at 6.4. So she was in that diabetic category.
Mhm.
She knew she needed help. She was feeling terrible.
Yeah.
And she wasn't sleeping well. She was using sleep medications to help kind of, she said, drug her to sleep was her
Right.
quote. But again, working through some very specific protocols and plans. 3 months later, her A1C is down under 5.8 already. So
Woohoo.
she's, in that pre-diabetic category still, but big decrease. And
So
the first thing,
close. Yeah.
yeah, and the first thing that improved on her from a symptom perspective was sleep. As soon as she
Sure.
saw the inflammation down in her body, her sleep improved. She
Yeah.
doesn't use medication anymore. Her blood sugars are getting more balanced. She's feeling more energetic. So sleep's a big one.
It is a big one. And I feel like it's one because then they're the people that aren't shorting themselves, but they haven't had good quality sleep and they don't know it, right? Just with, again, when I think back to, okay, how were we designed to live and what do we need to compensate for today? And I feel like that's the almost like hidden unless people are tracking. Um,
Yes.
that sleep quality is same thing like as progesterone drops even. So even early on, that's sometimes one of the first things people
Yeah.
feel is like, oh, it's just my sleep.
Yes. And like you say, it's such a revolving door because people can be, kind of following a sleep hygiene strategy. Like they're going to bed on time, they're staying in
Right.
bed long enough, but they can't get that quality sleep no matter what they do. And again, back to, yes, the hormones play a role. They can trigger some of that poor sleep, but underneath that, the root usually comes down to imbalances and inflammation. And we've
Yeah.
got to go to the gut to look for where that's coming from. We've got to go way upstream from the hormone symptoms.
So true. I just had a flashback to probably 6, 7 years ago. Like, oh, come on, everything's the gut. Is it really all the gut? It is.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, right? Yeah, I think it's the same. Like it was this grand discovery when I first became a functional medicine practitioner. Oh, I just fixed the gut and everything improves. But years later, you can see it's still the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and it's again, everything, especially like we thought that we had all these one-way pathways, right? And everything is a two-way street. And the gut is really, and I don't think it's the second brain. I think it's the first brain.
it's ground zero.
It
Yeah,
really is.
it's
Yeah.
ground zero. Yeah, you really can't get anything going with your health until you get that gut at least back into some sense of balance, and it takes, I don't know about for you when you got your health on track, but for me, within about 6 to 9 months, I started to notice feeling more like myself again, but it really
Mhm.
took about 2 years, so
Yeah.
got me remodeling and rebalancing. I mean, it's not just some quick fix with a dietary strategy and a few supplements over, a month or 2 or 3. It takes
Right.
time.
Yeah. Well, and I say for me, it took, I mean, honestly, I to feel better, like I felt the needle move, but I was so depleted of healthy fats. I grew up fat phobic. I was super, super toxic. I was celiac and didn't know it. I mean, you just name it. I was that.
Yeah,
And I didn't have you to work with, right? Or me to work with. So
yeah.
I say that I, like you, I do what I do to shorten the path, right? My approach was throw spaghetti at the wall and thank goodness. And that's where I feel very sure and certain that this is what I'm supposed to do, because I didn't take it all into account. I didn't do, I got enough movement with the right diet change and consistent meditation
Mhm.
together that then my brain could work again and I could go back to school and learn, because that alone was life changing.
Yeah.
And so I still say, like at 56, I feel better than I felt at 55.
Mhm.
So at first 6 years, I've been like, oh, I'm here. And then I look over my shoulder and I'm like, no, actually, I feel even better this year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it builds on itself over time, right? Either for better or for worse.
yeah,
And I'm sure you've had those calls with potential clients, and so have I, where they say, "I just don't know if I can do this right now.
yeah.
I'm gonna chat with you again in a bit," right? And
Hmm.
inevitably, you do talk to them in a bit, and they're not better, they're worse.
Yeah. I had a client that I worked with many, many years ago. Sweet, sweet, sweet gal. And I can't remember honestly how many diagnoses she had, because again, I don't pay a lot of attention to that.
Yeah.
And she just, we did work together and she learned some things, but she couldn't, the consistency, and the diet was a really big piece for her. She was, extremely carb addicted and had a lot of stress, and she couldn't do it. And
Yeah.
she did circle back many years later, probably 4 years later. That number I do remember. She had 8 diagnoses
Mhm.
and she was ready and she did it. And she, feels amazing. She's still a patient at our clinic. It's so sometimes I say, like, I want it too much for the client
Totally.
showing up at the door, because I know it's possible.
Yeah.
Like I'm not, we're all special, but we're all also designed to heal.
Mhm.
And so it's sometimes really hard when people aren't ready, but when they're not ready, they're not ready. And
No.
you know, yeah.
No, no, and they need the right tools, but they need the tools at the right time.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and I find I mean, I do find sometimes women, if they're in a really crummy relationship or marriage and
Yeah.
there's a lot of stress around that, and I talk to them, 1 or 2 years later, and either things have resolved in their marriage or they've gone their separate ways,
Right.
they're at that stage to heal their
Yeah.
bodies, right? So there's often a lot of barriers with relationship challenges, either at home or, it can be in the workplace too. It's just
Yeah.
not allowing them to take that step.
Yeah. Don't
So
you
they
find that one of the gifts with the population you work with is that as they learn and they heal, like I feel like ends up changing generations
It does.
because families are learning to go back to real food and stress management isn't self-indulgent and all
Yes.
the things.
Yes. I mean, super commonly, because I work with women primarily, and a lot of them
Yeah.
are moms.
Yeah.
I work with their daughters, I work with their children.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can definitely start to snowball in the right direction versus the wrong direction, right?
Yeah. That's the
Or the foundations for health, which is the goal.
that is the goal. Was absolutely the goal.
Um, but I mean, we have a long ways to go there in society
It's
with
an uphill. I joke because between the podcast and then the clinic, I live in this bubble of functional
yeah.
medicine and wellness and like-minded people and then I drive home and I see the line around the corner at the fast food restaurant and I'm like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
right. It's progress. We have more work to do.
You see the lineup out the door at Starbucks, and
Yes.
all those
Yeah,
things. Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
amazing.
mean, again, it's just back to, I mean, you got to want it. You got to be in a place to accept it. But you have to be consistent with making the changes needed.
And in your opinion, does consistent mean perfection?
Um, it's a good question, because I actually was just on a call with someone. We were talking about that as they'd come through 3 months of being very consistent with, I would say, pretty close to perfection.
Hmm.
Um, and she was having amazing results, of course, but she's like, I can't keep this level of perfection forever.
Right.
What's the way to open this up? Um, so we don't just decide, when the client feels like they're kind of getting done, that's when we open it up, right? We've really got
Right.
to look at labs and where
Yeah.
they're at and have some objective measurements for understanding when they can open things up. But I
Yeah.
find people do well initially at the start when they're 90 to
Yeah.
100% on the plan,
Absolutely.
which could be
Absolutely.
anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Most people do well, I find they can sustain something really specific for, on average, 2, 3 months. A lot of people after that, they find it more challenging for various different reasons,
Yeah.
even just from a mindset perspective, right? So, um,
Sure. Like going in knowing this is time limited. I can do anything for X, whatever your
yeah.
limitation is. And we have to remember we're talking about specifically today women. Like women can do anything. Come on.
True.
Yeah, I did. Well, I shouldn't share that story. But recently overheard a conversation and I was laughing because I didn't have to have the conversation. It was a male who had done a food sensitivity panel and he didn't like the results, but he did the panel because he didn't like the symptoms. And so to
Yeah, it doesn't
just
match
keep
up.
saying, I can't do that. I can't do that. That doesn't sound good. I don't want it. And it's like, well, but again, timing, right? And in a month he might decide, you know what, I should probably just try giving that food up for a little while and seeing. It was kind of funny, but I feel like so many women come in with perfectionism being one of the factors that got them to my doorstep.
Yes.
That is a really hard balance, especially when, now I was going to say people with autoimmunity, but really when you haven't felt well and you don't feel like yourself,
Mhm.
and then you do things that oh my gosh, I'm back. I was in there the whole time.
Yeah,
It's hard to open back up.
it is.
And so it's funny because in the beginning, I always tell people, like, you don't believe me right now, but I'm going to have to convince you it's time to open up because
Yeah,
like
they're
you said,
scared.
yeah, it's they're comfortable. And my husband always used to say, and it used to drive me crazy. And now I'm like, oh, he was right. true wellness is resilient. And so we shouldn't
Yes.
have to hold so
Can't
tight
be
in
in
a
this
little
little bubble
box.
forever,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. It's not good for your gut microbiome too, which is one of the hallmarks of maintaining your immunity, right?
Yeah.
But diversity with your foods, rotations of different things coming in. So
Yeah.
you need
Yeah.
those different microbes from all the different types of foods, right? So, I mean, I usually do suggest that people move into an 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
What I find a lot of women, especially if they already have known autoimmunity, if they slide back, to even the 70-30,
Mhm. It's
they
too
start to be
much.
more symptomatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also with women, there's a little bit more of I find a slippery slope too, where 70-30 really just means it's back in, you know?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
there's
Exactly.
and I joke, like because we're talking about real whole nutrient dense foods, and I am right there with you. Like the most varied diet that supports your body is the ideal, and that may change over time, and
Yeah.
it's definitely going to be different for you than it is for me.
Yeah.
And I joke, but like processed foods and sugar are not in that like they're
No, I know it's like if
they're
you're trying to
just
do a food
inflammatory.
challenge, right?
Period.
People, can I food challenge alcohol or can I
Yeah.
food challenge cookies? It's like,
Right.
well, you can, but
But we're
it's
not
not,
calling that a challenge.
no, it's not providing any nutrition. So
Yeah, I love that.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's that combination approach, right? There's a time to tighten it up, and then
Yeah,
there is a time to open it up, and it's up to
and you
us
may
to.
sometimes have to tighten it back up a little bit again. I call, it's time to up level or reset, and
Mhm.
that's okay because
Yeah.
life probably threw something different at you, and so it's
Yeah.
this is an ongoing, like, there is no, "I got this figured out, check on the board, and I'm just gonna live this way for the rest of
Mhm.
my days," because we're
Yeah.
not static.
No. And I mean, I often have women, I'm sure you do too, come to me and say, I did this detox protocol, I did this plan, and now I'm off it and I'm back to what I was doing before. And so there isn't really any change over
Right.
time. They're just
Yeah.
thinking they've got to kind of compress and do this little
No.
protocol for the time being, and then they can go back
One
to
that wasn't even like, designed for them. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
absolutely. Well, we speak the same language. I could talk to you all day long, but I promised I would get you out on time. So listeners are leaning in right now because they know I'm going to ask you for one step that they can take starting today to move the needle on their journey.
I mean, we talked about it definitely. Um, the biggest needle mover I see for
Mhm.
autoimmunity combined with many different conditions and symptoms I see is an whole foods anti-inflammatory diet.
Love it.
Yeah. If you don't have that in place, any of those other fancy protocols and strategies and detoxes and supplements and all the things you can try that are quite complex,
Yeah.
they really won't take hold. And that's part of that consistency over time, right? The dietary strategy has to be in place, at least 80-20, sometimes even tighter when needed.
Yeah. Ah, such amazing, amazing gold. Angela, for people that are listening on the go and aren't going to check the notes, where is the best place for them to find you?
Best place is my website, www.angelasimpsonfunctionalmedicine.ca. I've got lots of information on there, and there's a way to contact me there as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for you sharing your wisdom, expertise, and kindness with us today.
Well, thanks, Julie. It was great to chat with you as well.
For everyone listening, remember you can get those show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. helping you take your power back.